Thank you, everybody. So we're now ready to turn over to Patrick Key for the conclusions to our conference. Thank you.
So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for staying with us. I found this conference really interesting, and I hope that you found it as interesting and stimulating as I did. One word about, again, the way in which EASA does these conferences. We don't do conferences for the sake of doing a conference. We do a conference in order to drive actions afterwards. And what I intend to show to you this afternoon, or to say to you, is what were, in our views, the key points coming out of the panels, and almost on each of those points, try to explain to you how we propose to take those conclusions into action and what we propose to do. So I will start with the first panel, which basically was a very good panel with a diversity of stakeholders, which agreed that aviation post-COVID, and in particular ATM, must be built on resilience and agility. It also agreed, but that's obvious, that the ATM operational landscape in Europe is very fragmented, and that, of course, this fragmentation is not helping the timely introduction of new operational concepts and technological solutions. We'll come back to that, because this notion of time for change and the amount of time which is necessary in order to implement change was also tackled or discussed in the last panel, so we'll come back to that. Of course, on those points, we are in EASA ready to accompany all the operational changes and support the defragmentation by means of further harmonization with the different tools at our reach. That includes mandates, regulatory tools, referring to EUROCAE in particular, but also other standards. So we are committed to rely on industry standards and to enhance harmonization in Europe by mandating, when necessary, the implementation of those standards, but also other tools. For instance, when we perform certification oversight, or when we perform what we call standardization activities, this means inspecting member states and making sure that the same laws are implemented in a similar manner in all the member states. So we are fully ready to listen to the industry and to make sure that we can rely on industry standards and promote industry standards. There was discussion on technology, and basically, technology was seen as the great instrument which will make ATM better, safer, greener, more efficient, and so on and so forth. But then in the last panel, there was this question about, okay, technology is good, we have the technology available, but it does not get implemented. So what are the obstacles towards the implementation of technology? One of the discussions with representatives of the staff, in particular, but also of ANSPs, was to say, okay, technology will help, but there is a need to ensure that there is a smooth introduction and gradual introduction of the new functionalities, maintaining the good safety records in our sector. And obviously, and there was a lot of discussion about this, the human will continue to be key from a safety perspective, but also from an operational perspective. The conference called, and that was actually a very good news for us, because it's in the heart of our current thinking. The conference called for introducing system-based ATCO licensing and training, with a view to optimize training and enhance availability of the controllers, positively impacting mobility and, in general, the resilience of the system. There is also an appetite on looking at new business models, new, more flexible funding schemes, in particular for times of crisis, and this is also something that is very interesting. I think it's outside of the remit of EASA, but we will make sure that we can at least launch some discussions and reflection on this subject. In terms of safety, because this is a safety conference, a question was asked on whether the system is considered to be safe, and the unanimous answer to that was that the system is considered to be safe. There was this notion of we should not be complacent with safety, so it's safe, but it's an everyday effort to maintain it safe. But also the fact that there are new emerging risks, in particular with more data-intensive processes and systems. There is an emerging cyber risk which we should not underestimate. In the second panel, the conference showed support for CES2+ proposals to incentivize environmental friendly behavior, such as green charges to encourage efficient flight trajectories. This calls for monitoring and measuring the environmental performance of the aviation actors. And on this topic, we are working hand in hand with the Commission, but also with the Parliament, on what we call an environmental label project, and we are working with Eurocontrol on this as well, where basically we would like to propose to the citizens or to the passengers a way in which they can assess the environmental performance of a flight, of an ASP, an airport, an airline. And this is something that I think can help in building transparency on the way in which aviation is tackling environmental concerns. And I believe that this can really bring forward our industry in terms of better in environmental performance. It was also acknowledged that PBN, for instance, PBN implementation could bring significant environmental benefits. And there, it was mentioned by Christine Berg, I think that EASA plays a crucial role in terms of oversight and standardization across member states. It was seen, however, that the success of PBN, but that's also valid for a number of key questions. Change will be possible only if there is a political will and operational support at all levels, local, regional, state and EU level, in order to make it happen. If you take PBN as an example, there is indeed a legal mandate for implementation of PBN. And we are currently in EASA with the Commission struggling in making sure that the mandate is actually respected by the member states and by the industry. Further research is required on non-CO2 emissions to ensure that proposed policy options lead to an overall benefit in terms of climate change. In the meantime, win-win solutions that reduce both CO2 and non-CO2 emissions should be promoted, such as the uptake of the sustainable aviation fuels. And there, we believe, and it's in the legislative package which is being proposed by the Commission, EASA can play a key role here by facilitating the approval of SAF and reducing the time to market. In the last panel, there was this notion of the fact that digitalization is the key to the future. That technology is available. It's a matter of implementation. When you think about it, you know, all the new technologies, machine learning is coming. I refer to what Peter mentioned and Jacopo, and it's just about how do we implement it. And indeed, we have not been that good in our industry to implement new technologies. Frédéric Bello was mentioning this morning that ATC next year will be 100 years old. But do you know that VHF radio, which is the common tool for ATC, is almost 100 years old as well? And that we continue to use in our very modern system technologies dating from the 1930s shows that in terms of introducing new technologies, we can make progress. And the question for the last panel was, how do we do that? And there were a lot of thoughts, which I found very interesting, on the fact that it's not a matter necessarily of research, it's a matter of implementation. We can do more demonstrations, we can better coordinate implementation. I think it's also a question of mindset. And there, I really believe that new entrants, new ways of doing it's not really air traffic management, UTM, for instance. That can be a game changer, and that was what Peter mentioned, I think, earlier. This can be a game changer. New CNS technologies can also be game changers, and we need to use those bricks in terms of technologies to enhance change, because maybe time is right now to implement change. In terms of solution, very interesting ideas about Appleization. I really like this notion, Appleization of ATM. We in EASA have decided to base our new rulemaking activities on two foundations. And the first foundation is the future of ATCO licensing and training. And we created a steering group for that, which is chaired by Peter Kearney and which is composed of ANSPs, unions, training organizations, and member states. We really see value in having this approach where basically the industry, the community tells us how to prioritize our activities and can support us, advise us on where to drive our new rules. We intend to do exactly the same thing, and this is the second pillar of our strategy for rulemaking. We intend to do that with the certification of ATM systems, which came a number of times in the discussion in the last panel. Again, we intend to create a steering group which will be composed of stakeholders, and this steering group will steer our work on this very important topic, because I believe strongly that yes, ATM systems are different from the Airbus and Boeings from aircraft. The numbers are completely different, the business models are completely different, but there are similarities as well. And I really believe that we could do better by having more common standards, more common systems, more common components that would be certified once and for all European states. And that's what we would like to work on with you, with the community, and we'll make proposals hopefully by the middle of next year. Because all this is meant to have a faster pace in the implementation of new technologies. And there, I take again this example of VHF. VHF is supposed to be replaced by data link. The data link technologies are not dating from the 30s, they are dating from the 90s, I think, 80s. It's not really implemented, or it is implemented, but it doesn't really work. So we can do better, and we can only do better if we work more hand in hand between the regulators, us and the member states, as mentioned by Sreko, with the industry, manufacturing industry, with the social partners, and with the NSPs. And that will be my last point. I would like to thank you all, thank all the panelists for joining us. I hope it was an interesting experience, and that you found this couple of hours entertaining and stimulating in terms of thoughts. We certainly did on our side, and I'm pretty sure that there are other lessons that we will get from this conference in EASA, and that we will use in order to continue to build a better system, if we can, for Europe. Thank you very much for your attention, and it's been a pleasure hosting this conference here in Cologne. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Before closing, just some final acknowledgements to the people who made this whole event happen. Thank you to all of our speakers, moderators, and panelists. Thank you to our co-hosts, Slovenia and Eurocontrol. Thank you to the many colleagues in EASA and many other organizations who made this happen from behind the scenes. Thank you also to the technical team. The conference will be available on our YouTube channel at some point over the next few days. And finally, thanks to you, the audience. We hope you found the conference interesting and useful, and that you'll join us again for a further EASA event sometime soon. Thank you.